The rain had just stopped, leaving the world outside washed in gold and gray. The Riverside Cafe glimmered in the quiet of an early evening, the kind of place where time seemed to slow, where laughter and love stories had been whispered across wooden tables for years. At one of those tables sat Ethan Morrell, a man whose name was spoken with admiration and envy across boardrooms and news headlines. To the world, he was a self-made millionaire, a man who had everything: success, wealth, charm, and the kind of confidence that made others shrink or sparkle in his presence. Yet behind that calm, refined exterior sat a loneliness that no luxury could fill. He checked his watch again, the third time in 10 minutes. His blind date was late. He didn't even know her name yet. His best friend had arranged it, insisting he needed to meet someone real for once, someone not from his world of perfection and pretense. But as the minutes dragged into nearly an hour, he began to wonder if this too was a mistake. The sunset was dipping lower, and the soft amber light danced on his half-finished cup of coffee. Maybe she had decided not to come. Maybe she had Googled him and realized who he was, like so many others before her. Before we go deeper into this story, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and love that goes beyond appearances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring you more stories that touch hearts and remind the world that compassion still matters. Just as Ethan was about to call it a night, he heard hurried footsteps, uneven, squelching on the damp wooden deck. When he looked up, his breath caught. A young woman was approaching, her beige dress smeared with dark patches of mud, her sandals dangling from one hand. Strands of her blonde hair clung wetly to her face, her cardigan soaked at the edges. She looked like she had been through something terrible, and yet there was something hauntingly pure in her eyes. She paused when she saw him, catching her breath, her chest rising and falling as if she had run a long way. The waiter stared. A couple at the next table whispered, but Ethan couldn't move. There was something raw, something real about her presence. She looked out of place, fragile, and yet there was a quiet strength in the way she tried to steady herself. He stood up slowly, unsure what to say. She offered a faint, apologetic smile. "I'm sorry I'm late," her expression seemed to say without words. "I didn't mean to show up like this." Ethan gestured for her to sit, and she hesitated only for a second before lowering herself into the chair opposite him. The silence between them was strange, not awkward, but charged with something unspoken. Her hands trembled as she placed her sandals under the table. The hem of her dress was torn, her knees faintly scraped. Ethan noticed the faint smell of river water and earth. He wanted to ask what happened, but something in her face told him she'd tell him when she was ready. Minutes passed. The golden light shifted to dusk, and slowly her breathing calmed. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost fragile, yet filled with quiet dignity. She told him she had been on her way when a car swerved into a puddle, drenching her from head to toe. Instead of going home to change, she kept walking. Her phone had fallen into the water when she tried to cross a flooded path, and she got lost on the way. "I didn't want you to think I wasn't coming," she murmured. Ethan watched her as she spoke, and something in him began to change. He had met women dressed in diamonds and designer silk, who smiled for cameras but never for him. Yet here was someone who had shown up, messy, exhausted, late, and still trying her best to keep her word. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had done that. They talked as the sky deepened into twilight. Her name was Lily, an elementary school art teacher who loved painting sunsets and teaching children to dream beyond their small-town walls. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't even aware that he was that Ethan Morrell, the millionaire whose face appeared in business magazines. To her, he was just a man on a blind date by the river. The more she spoke, the more Ethan found himself drawn into her world, a world of laughter that came from struggle, of beauty that bloomed from imperfection. He found himself confessing things he never told anyone, how his father's death had left a void he filled with work, how success often felt like a mask, how he missed the feeling of being seen for who he really was. As night settled, the soft glow of streetlights reflected in the river. Lily's cardigan was still damp, but she no longer seemed to care. She laughed softly at one of Ethan's self-deprecating jokes, and in that moment, something shifted between them. a spark not of attraction, but recognition. They were two souls who had forgotten what it felt like to be truly present. Ethan realized then that if she had arrived perfectly dressed and on time, he might never have seen her for who she really was. It was the mud, the lateness, the honesty that made her unforgettable. He reached across the table, not to hold her hand, but just to let his fingers rest close enough to let her know. He understood. The waiter brought 2 cups of hot tea. They sat in silence, watching the river, the city lights shimmering like stars scattered across water. It was as if the universe had planned this imperfect meeting to remind them that real connections are rarely neat, rarely timed, and never predictable. Ethan offered to walk her home, but Lily smiled gently and shook her head. She lived nearby, she said, and wanted to enjoy the quiet walk. "Thank you for not walking away," she said softly, and with that, she slipped her sandals back on, still muddy, and walked away down the riverside path. He watched her go until she disappeared into the night. Days turned into weeks, and something about that evening lingered in Ethan's mind. He found himself visiting the same cafe, not to wait, but to remember. He had her number now, exchanged at the end of that night, but he hesitated to call. He wasn't sure what to say. Every time he looked at the contact saved as Lily Mud Girl in his phone, he smiled, but his heart hesitated, afraid that real might disappear if he reached for it too soon. Then one afternoon, as he sat at his office window overlooking the city, a courier arrived with a small canvas wrapped in brown paper. No note, just a painting, of a wooden table by the river, 2 cups of tea, and a pair of sandals resting on the deck. The brushwork was gentle, intimate, almost wistful. He didn't need a signature to know who had painted it. For the first time in years, Ethan left work early. He drove through the fading daylight, back to the riverside cafe where it all began. And there she was, Lily, sitting at the same table, sketchbook in hand, her hair tied back with a ribbon. This time, she wasn't late. This time, she smiled first. They didn't speak much that evening. They didn't need to. The silence between them had become a language of its own. Something deeper than words, something neither wealth nor appearance could define. Weeks later, the story of Ethan Morell's mysterious mud girl made quiet rounds through his circle of friends and social media. Though he never confirmed or denied it, all he said, when asked about his change in demeanor, was that he finally understood the difference between a perfect date and a real connection. Lily continued her teaching, her life unchanged by his fame or money. And yet, she changed everything about him. He began funding art programs in schools anonymously, donating to community centers under her name. He never wanted credit. He just wanted to keep the light she had given him alive in the world. Months later, on a rainy afternoon that mirrored the night they met, Ethan returned to the cafe again, carrying a small box. Inside it was a delicate bracelet, simple, silver, engraved with the words, "Thank you for showing up." When he handed it to her, she looked at him with those same eyes, the ones that had stopped him from walking away, and whispered, "You showed up too." They both laughed, softly, their reflections trembling in the rain-streaked window, and as the evening faded into the rhythm of falling water, the story of the millionaire and the woman who came covered in mud became more than a coincidence. It became a reminder that love doesn't always arrive on time or dressed perfectly. It arrives honestly, and that's what makes it beautiful. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Every interaction helps us share more real, human stories that celebrate love, faith, and the beauty of imperfection. Before you go, tell us in the comments, would you have stayed if your blind date showed up late and covered in mud? Because sometimes, the most imperfect arrivals lead to the most beautiful beginnings.